Okay, good evening, everybody. Clock is showing 7 o'clock, so I'd like to call the meeting to order and have staff call the roll, please.
Mario Ryan, Bart Bartles,
Here.
Morgan Johnston,
Here.
Todd Rusk, Andrew Stumpf,
Here.
Pam Wojcik,
Here.
Stephen Wald.
Here. Okay, it appears we have a quorum, so we can get underway. The agenda has been circulated. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Okay. Hearing none, we can move forward to the approval of the minutes. A copy of the minutes was circulated by email, and we did get some changes from our chair, Mario Ryan, who's not here tonight. Those changes were pretty trivial, so I'll summarize them now verbally for the record. A revised version of the minutes is before all the commissioners. One is a correction of a misspelling of a name in two places. One is the addition of APA to the State Planning Award under the staff report. And the third, under announcements, is the addition of the words "and said that" to a statement that Mario Ryan announced and said that she will attend, et cetera, et cetera. So those three changes have been made to the circulated version of the minutes. Are there any other changes to the minutes?
Yes, as far as the attendance goes, I was here in spirit, but not physically. So.
Okay, so noted. Remove Bart Bartles from the attendance list. Any other changes? Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
I can second that.
Okay. Okay. All those who approve the minutes, please vote aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we've adopted those minutes. I am looking at the audience, and this is the time for public input. Would anyone wish to address the commission tonight? No? Okay. So we can move on to the staff report.
Thanks. Good evening. A couple of updates on the climate action plan first. We've met with our municipal electric aggregation consultant. We're coming to the end of our current contract period in June, and we'll be going out to bid for another contract for municipal electric aggregation. And we've discussed the possibility of specifying in the renewable energy credits that we buy as part of that contract, specifying US EPA Green Power Partnership qualified RECs. The difference between ones that qualify for the EPA's Green Power Partnership and the ones that don't is the vintage date on the REC. So they have to be within a certain time period that you're applying them to your electricity consumption, so that you're not buying years and years old renewable energy credits. So our consultant's going to look into the possibility of doing that and what the implications would be in terms of price for doing that. And that's an item in our climate action plan. Second, as part of our Grow Solar technical assistance, we're investigating conducting a bid to install solar energy for rooftop facilities owned by the city, as well as a closed landfill. So just move that in the internal tracking of our climate action plan to in progress. So we're kind of collecting information and doing feasibility at this time.
Hey, Scott?
Yes.
On that item, it sounds like it's really preliminary. But any thoughts on the financing mechanism, or how it gets paid for? Any thoughts on that at this point?
Yeah, there's a couple different options. A PPA, I think, is the most desirable power purchase agreement, whereby the installer or developer would own and operate the system on your roof and be responsible for everything, and then you pay them a per kilowatt fee for some term of years. We are also investigating what the state's net metering rules are for commercial accounts. For residential accounts, net metering is netted for the year or for some 12-month period, But beyond that, any credits you have, that is, if your rooftop generates more solar more electricity than you use at your house, you actually lose those credits. They reset every 12 years. Considering that we don't have a substantial demand where we would put solar, say at the closed landfill, it wouldn't be desirable to put out a 1 megawatt system for powering essentially a shack at the landscape recycling center. So we got to figure that out. If net metering isn't advantageous for commercial, and I don't know all the rules yet, then we'd probably want to have some other type of structure, financing structure and ownership structure.
So I don't want to distract too much, but your comment about net metering in commercial may have some implications for the solar Urbana-Champaign that we're talking about if we want to bring in some commercial groups.
My expectation is for most commercial buildings, they're not going to be able to, on a rooftop, they're not going to be able to generate more electricity than they use in a 12-month period.
Right.
So I suspect that the net metering rules won't
I see.
matter.
Okay.
Same
the
with
12
households.
Got it.
Same with households. Now it's possible if you have a super efficient, tight
Right.
building and a whole lot of solar, it could happen, but
Okay.
generally not.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Mhm. Also regarding the Illinois Gross Solar Technical Assistance, our technical assistance provider, the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, has signed a contract with a company, Straight Up Solar, to conduct a group buy of rooftop solar for residents in our market area. We're defining it as Champaign County. We're still developing marketing and promotion materials on that, and we expect an announcement to be made soon, and hopefully informational sessions called Solar Power Hours will begin in December. Additionally, our community bulk solar program, our group buy, I think is somewhat unique. I don't know if it's totally unique compared to others in that we have a commercial option, and that helps address this Goal 3 Action 5, and so I've marked that as in progress in our tracking as well. An update on the Energy Star Challenge. I spoke with a couple of groups, Faith in Place and the Institute for Sustainability, Energy, and Environment on that program, and we're currently at 44 buildings registered in the challenge. I wanted to note some news with the greenhouse gas modeling tool that we use, ClearPath, provided by ICLEI, a professional association that we're a member of. Bloomberg Foundation has provided ICLEI some funding so that they are now able to provide that tool for free. Well, part of the tool, the Community Greenhouse Gas Inventory tool or module, for free to all cities in the U.S. I'm hoping that we'll get a lot of cities that were interested but not sure they wanted to pay for it engaged, and that way we'll have more cities that we can kind of do an apples-to-apples comparison.
Scott, so that's any city in the U.S.? It doesn't have to be like of a certain size or already participating in a program?
My understanding is it's any city in the U.S. Now, we will continue to pay our membership fees with ICLEI because what they've done is opened up the community module of that program for free. There's also a municipal module, so greenhouse gases from city operations and vehicles and so forth. And we also use that tool. We benchmarked for the first time just our facilities and vehicles this last year. And so I want to continue to do that. And so we'll continue to pay that membership fee. Regarding our water management plan, all parties to the Clinton landfill, including the city of Urbana, the Clinton landfill lawsuit, have signed the consent decree ending that legal action. Some of the parties have expressed an interest in continuing that coalition to work on other aquifer-related issues. I think in our last meeting, there was a summary attached from the mayor's office describing the terms of that consent decree that the cities and the landfill operator were able to come to. But it does sound like there is some interest to continue working on different aquifer-related issues as a region. As part of ISTC, the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center's Million-Gallon Challenge, the city had been awarded a small grant to install some irrigation control sensors. And it was a one-year study. We've completed that study. The results are included in this document. Unfortunately, the results are inconclusive. What we were doing was comparing irrigation consumption on meters that had advanced controls like an evapotranspiration sensor and those that just had a simple timer. And what happened was after the installation of the advanced controls, we had a summer, an irrigation season, where it rained every day, and there was actually no reason to ever turn on our landscape irrigation. And so we didn't get much of a test. We've reported the results, and we're finishing up that report, the formal report with ISTC. But we're going to continue to monitor those conditions, those particular meters over time to see if there's a change in irrigation consumption. There's two different sites. One of them is an excellent one to continue to do over time, to monitor over time. It's South Philo Road. There's two different there's a meter on each side of the road separately, and they irrigate essentially the same square footage. So it's kind of a mirror image, and one has just a timer, the other has a timer and an evapotranspiration control. So if we leave those that equipment the same over time, we should be able to see some distinction or not between how much irrigation water is used. South Philo Road, yeah, it's the landscape strip between the sidewalk and the curb on south of Florida, north of Colorado. The other location is 211 North Vine, which is just some landscaping along the viaduct on the west side of the road where you go under the train tracks. And that there's only 1 meter there, so what we were doing was a before-after test. So before we had a timer, after we had a timer plus a rain sensor. So a different control, a somewhat less smart control. On U-Cycle, staff have partnered with other municipalities in the region to conduct an electronics recycling event. You may have gone to that yourself. We haven't received results yet from the vendor. We'll get them hopefully this month and have it in the next staff report. Also, I wanted to announce, and there's a flyer in the packet, that staff is partnering with other municipalities in the region to celebrate America Recycles Day at Anita Pervez Nature Center. There is an event, second time that we've run this, the recycling coordinator, Courtney Kwong. The event is Creative Reuse Competition, and the event invites the public to make crafts from recycled items, view cloth and textile creations from local artists, and bring select items to be recycled. It's free and open to all ages. Our next meeting, regularly scheduled meeting, is December 1st at 7 p.m. in council chambers.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Moving on to continuing business.
Yeah, the only updates I have for the Grow Solar programming was actually in the staff report.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, we're still working on promotional items. We're working to set up a lot of the venues for community meetings before the program is announced, so that when announced, people actually have something they can do. They're not actually waiting for us to do something at that point and engage them, but they can sign up for a community meeting right away. For you all, if you have groups at work, social groups outside of work that are interested in getting together and hearing an hour-long presentation and dialogue about what this solar purchasing opportunity will offer them, we want to talk to you about that and set that up. Morgan, you had a question?
Yeah, so when is I mean, you're saying that those will probably start in December. Are we comfortable with any time in December? Because, I mean, I think it'd be good to have some on campus before people leave, and they leave early, sort of mid to early December for the semester end, finals, et cetera. So I'd like to know when the sort of drop, I don't know, the actual day that that we're comfortable knowing that we can do one of these events, the earliest day that we know for sure that we can do.
Can you give me dates of when people might be leaving campus and when they might be returning in January?
I can send that to you.
Okay.
The
And
other
we'll
thing,
work the schedule to accommodate that.
yeah, the other thing is, how much availability is there? Because when you start thinking about where we can share this on campus, it gets pretty broad quickly. And so, you know, how many people are available to do it? Can we only do one per hour? Do we need an hour between them? Can we set up 5 in a day? What is the availability of the people speaking? I don't know if you already know or if we need to find out.
I think it's flexible. If there was a scenario where a room was available all day and we thought that we could schedule different people who had availability at different times of the day, yeah, maybe we would do something like back-to-back all day. I think utilizing existing groups like, you know, this department who know each other or so
Right.
forth might be a really good way to schedule those, because then it's someone down the hall from you is going and they stop and ask you if you're going, and then they both go, that sort of thing, rather than just a single call for anyone and everyone on campus to show up. And then again, we may do both of those. We may do specific ones for specific departments or groupings, as well as one for anyone and everyone.
What about, I mean, who's really speaking? Is it the technical assistance folks with Midwest Energy? Is it Renewable Energy Association?
Yeah,
or Energy?
MREA. There's also an
MREA.
MEEA.
Yeah, so Midwest Renewable Energy Association is providing the speakers.
They may speak at some of them.
Is it something that also the SAC members, or like I could do a speech and you could do a speech at different places? Is that part of the intention or not?
If you're interested
totally willing.
you know, participating in those, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's bring you in. I think that what'll happen is MREA will develop kind of a standard program of how that power hour is going to proceed, and then they're going to plug in people. They may train some of their some of the local contacts here to do kind of the big picture. I think they're going to expect the installer to show up to as many of these as possible, so that they have FaceTime with the interested parties as well.
And people would actually sign up while at these events, possibly.
Yeah. So the way it works is you bring folks together in this informational session. You clear away a lot of the informational barriers, and then you get them signed up for a site assessment. And then the installer is going to walk away with all these addresses. They're probably going to check an aerial or something like that, ensure that you have a roof that has, you know, decent pitches suitable for solar, and ensure you don't have a big tree shading your south-facing roof. And if that's okay, then they'll probably proceed with contacting the person, setting up a site assessment, whereby they'll get really specifics. They'll probably walk away from that, or maybe they'll do it at the same time, I'm not sure. But at some point, they will follow up with a proposal of, here's what you can do, and here's the financing, and so on.
So, and then how long do we actually allow people to do that first inquiry? Does that go all the way through February? There was a bit of a 3-month window I remember we talked about, but can we
Yeah, I don't-
set something up for for during February at least, but maybe even into March, but it sort of depends on where we're at in February.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact time frames for that. But there's kind of a time frame to get folks signed up. And we want to emphasize the limited time aspect of it to motivate people to make a decision. And then the installer will have a certain amount of time to take those contracts that they've concluded and actually get them installed at people's houses. And some of that is going to be driven by the need to utilize or uptake the SRECs. I think that's less of a pressure. I think a big pressure is the federal tax credit, which expires December 2016. So we have some terms in the contract. I'm not sure if we give the contractor until 2016 to finish installations or whether it's earlier, but I think it must be at least 2016.
So, but going back to the sort of driving, spreading awareness about this program, and we can get various people signed up to do the Solar Power Hour, which I think is a great name, but we also can do some social media information and sort of electronic messaging. So is that something that MREA is putting together, that there's maybe a flyer and a online sign up and stuff like that?
Yeah, they're going to drive all that, and then we can echo it on social media.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions for now.
Yeah. Did you want to get engaged with, the solar power hours? Okay. Other questions on solar?
It's exciting. That's moving forward. Okay, without objection, we'll move forward to new business. We have an item under new business, review of annual report format. Scott is taking the witness tape.
So as we've been working to develop metrics for all the work that we do in the environmental division, we've also been working to determine what metrics are the most important to report on every year. We collect a lot of data. Some of it is kind of minutia. Some of it, is really important and gives a good big picture snapshot of the work we're doing. Last year, I had taken 4 metrics, I think they were all stacked area graphs, and put them in kind of a memo format and delivered that as kind of our annual report. And so this year, I'm working to extend that effort just a little bit into something that's a little more of a report format and less of a memo format, so a little more design. And also, instead of 4 metrics for the 4 pieces of work that we do, a couple of metrics for the 4 pieces of work, for each of the 4 pieces of work we're doing. Not everything that you could ever find about those 4 pieces of work, but things that I think are important. As a reminder, the 4 pieces of work are energy and climate, water, waste and recycling, and nuisance. And so what I have here is a draft, and it's a template. Everything in it is kind of placeholder. It's not final data. And it's not going to win any design awards. But part of what I'm doing is balancing how much time and money we put into producing this each year versus what we're going to get out of it. And then, of course, I'm also balancing putting in enough information that it delivers something useful to the commission and to city council, but not too much that it becomes yet another report on the shelf that doesn't get read. So with that said, I'll give you just a very brief tour and take any comments or recommendations you have. So cover. Second page, there's a quick summary of what our division does. I have these boxes here with the intention that possibly I would put a budget summary in there so people have a sense of how much money we're working with. So it would be interesting for folks to know that of all the environmental sustainability budgets, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of it or something is in recycling service. I was hoping that our open finance visualization tool that we have on our website could export something really quick and easy, and I could just drop it in there as a graphic. But it doesn't quite work that well, not because the tool has a problem, but rather because the U-Cycle budget is in a completely separate place from the rest of the environmental budget, and so it's hard to do a visualization that has them both. So I may be in a position where I have to kind of manually transcribe those numbers into a chart. Second page, I've got kind of my notes here of what we might put in this page, and then I've got two charts that look very familiar. They're in our energy and climate plan, our climate action plan. Morgan.
Just to comment on those, I was thinking it might be nice to see a vertical line at the current year. Especially if this becomes something that you do each year, then that line would change with each year. And I don't know if, the two that you are showing with projected, would your intention be that they would be actual before, or would it be this is what the goal was projected?
So the way the projection works is you put in your baseline year, and that's the only measured data. Everything else forward is modeled, and you can't come in and put in multiple measured years. You're always starting from a new measured year. So if I were to show 2000 all the way back to 2007, where we have measured data, I could project all the way to 2020 or 2050, but I could not show 2007 measured data, sloped to 2013 measured data, and then project it on. We sort of have to make a choice. It's up for discussion what's most valuable to communicate here. There's a lot of things. There's a lot more in our climate action plan that's in the energy and climate data section. So we have stacked area for kilowatts used for the community in terms of gas used. But I think that's maybe a little too deep of a dive for this annual report, and it's already in this every other year report for the climate action plan. So I think we can probably keep this to one page as all the other topic sections are. But I'm happy to take any comments on what rendering would be most helpful here.
Well, just on the list of the trends that you're thinking about, isn't that what the top 6 lines are? These parentheses, trend of the community greenhouse gas?
Yeah, those are notes of what might go in that section.
Okay. Those would be trends of actual data? I'm asking.
With the ClearPath tool, you put in an inventory for a particular year, and then everything else is projections for it. Now, aside from that, I could take different data and create a brand new graph, but that's more manual processing.
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be good to have some of the information on the energy page be actual data.
The other thing to consider is,
I guess what I'm leaning to, what I'm trying to get
sure.
at.
The other thing to consider is we have 2 years of measured greenhouse gas emissions, so it's not as helpful probably as the modeled data in terms of where we're going. You'll see an example of that in another page where we have 2 years of data. It's not all that enlightening. Other thoughts on the energy page?
I guess I tend to, I tend to agree that it'd be, so if there's only 2 data points, that's something. But I tend to agree that it'd be great to see the actual measured in addition to the modeled. And I get where you're coming from. the extra time and everything. I mean, I'd help you out with that. If you can help, if you can ship me some of the data, I can play around with it or something. I'd be happy to do that.
Sure.
Can you refresh my memory about the availability of previous baselines and emissions data? I mean, it strikes me that we would have more than 2 years. But was there problems or a change with how we collected the data? Or do we really just have 2 years?
We've only inventoried 2 years. Now we have gas and electric from the utility company for, I think, every year since 2007. But that's not all the data needed for the inventory. There's transportation and waste and so forth. And if we were going to have an inventory for every year, we'd have to grab all of that data for every year. So when we show the gas and electric in the Climate Action Plan Phase 2, it is, I think it shows every year 2007 to 2013, and that's actual measured data. That's metered consumption, not projections. But that's sort of given to us. That's fairly easy to get from the utility company.
One other minor comment, the two graphs that are on here, one is the community and one is the municipal properties, and it doesn't really say that. You kind of have to figure it out, so making sure that it says it.
Yep, something I've, I'm reviewing this, titles, and also looking back at the more memo style, more abbreviated report we had last year. I also had captions that kind of describe what was going on, and I think that's probably a good idea as well. So I think both are due here.
It's also probably an artifact of this being a draft, but I don't see the goal reductions marked on these. I mean, it's hinted that it's there, but maybe it's behind it or
Yeah,
something.
if you look
Okay.
closely, you'll see in the legend,
Yeah.
they are there and they're grayed out.
Yeah.
So they're turned off.
Oh, okay.
There is a problem which I've notified ICLEI and ClearPath about in the way they render that. You enter in, I want a 25% reduction, that's my goal. But then if you say, please project from 2013 to 2020, it applies your 25% reduction to 2013, which is not appropriate. What our goal actually is a 25% reduction from 2007. And so when you do the math out, the goal is at the wrong level. So what I do so that there isn't a dotted line in the wrong place is I just turn it off. I can come back later and create a dotted line and overlay it in the right spot, and that might be worth it so that people know. And actually, I could turn back. Well, let's see. Yeah, if I ungray that part of the legend, then it'll put the dotted line back on in the wrong place. So I have to figure out if we can work that.
Does the tool let you export the numbers so you can build your own graph in Excel? Okay.
Yep.
I'll second Todd's offer. We'll be happy to work with you
Okay.
on the graphics.
Other comments on energy? Okay. Next section, a little more developed, the water section. We've got the community water consumption stacked area by sectors. Also, water consumption at city facilities by irrigation and buildings. We've got the trends for, zoom in a little bit, total per capita per day and residential per capita per day. A section for a featured project, so some text that's associated with this photo, and then our progress pie chart.
Scott, maybe I'm missing a key point, but the two graphs at the top, the one that is the city facilities water consumption, it says in 2012, the total city facilities was over 2.5 million gallons.
Correct.
And then the public sector, oh, this
That's
is 1,000
kilogallons.
gallons.
Yeah,
Okay,
kilogallons.
sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry.
No problem. Maybe those should be the same unit.
And just a comment on the formatting, if you're going to have them side by side and they're both going to show water consumption, put them in the same units, but make sure the scale's the same.
Which scaling are you thinking?
On the vertical axis. When you have two charts
Mhm.
side by side and you don't
Mhm.
have the scales the same, people don't tend to read the scale. They
Mm.
tend to look at the chart.
Mm-hmm.
And if the scales are not the same, they're not getting the right information from the chart.
I think you could just move them to not be next to each other. Because otherwise you're going to get 2,000 as the, it's going to be this tiny little line at the bottom compared to the 500,000. Right?
I don't think so, because you go to 300, well, okay, if you change the units.
Because it's 1,000 gallons.
You just need to be careful when you display the information, because people
Mhm.
don't read
Right.
what's written on the axis. They look at the colored area, and when you start to look at the colored area and it looks the same, I mean, you're okay with it being looked at and go, oh, it's about the same as that, even if it's not, then okay.
Yeah.
But
Well, maybe I'll try it a couple different ways and see how it looks on the page.
I think it would make sense to put the community per capita next to the community water consumption. And one's a
Mhm.
bar chart and one's a volume chart and line chart. So just sort of rearranging it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to put the featured project and the photo in one box, so people know.
Oh, so to connect the colors together, the colored background.
Yeah.
So it's a little more clear that they go
Mhm.
together.
And you might want to put it on the left-hand side. I don't know, because then you have to. Seems like you have to kind of read over to get to that point.
So something that's interesting about this, about the water, when we compare it to the energy or the climate one and the waste and recycling, is that this is the one that has the clearest downward trend. I mean, this is the most satisfying, like, all right, something's changing. And so as I look at it, I think, all right, this is great. And I guess I just wonder, and I think we've talked about this before, like, well, what's going on? And so, like in the, when we're talking about, similar axes and scales and stuff, I kind of didn't want, I didn't want to, on the city facilities water consumption, I kind of didn't want to see that one on the same scale, because then that would obscure the magnitude of change over time, over the last couple of years in city reduction. And I think that's an important story. Anyways, I guess all of that to say that it sure would be cool to have maybe a couple of sentences talking about what's going on. And I guess I wish I could, off the top of my head, kind of talk about some of those things, but I don't exactly know what's going on and why we have that change. And if we don't know why, maybe that's worth saying too. But that's a real trend, it seems like.
For the city facilities, I think we can attribute that to retrofits in the buildings. I think predominantly or completely faucet aerators at this point, although we have some
Okay.
other retrofits in mind in the
There
water
was
plant.
the data, or the server water thing.
Server room?
Yeah.
And then for the irrigation, much more substantial.
Yeah.
I think that's attributable to more management of those systems.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a wet spring, we've delayed turning those meters on. there's been a lot of aggressive repair and maintenance of those systems to prevent leaks as well. So I think that's attributable to more repair and management.
Mhm.
On the community side, the speculation is that for I don't know how many years the federal government has required gallons per minute type performance of water fixtures. And as old fixtures go away and are replaced by new ones, here locally and also nationally, water consumption has gone down per capita.
Okay. Well, the biggest chunks in the community are the residential and the public, and those are the two. Again, the other ones are small, so maybe the change may be obscured by the scale, but the residential and the public sector are where we see the big differences.
Yeah, what's interesting is that our per capita is going down, not too surprising because of the equipment changes over time, but that the total is also going down.
Yep.
So even though population is slowly going up, the total is still going down. So the per capita is going down by so much that it's overwhelming the population increase. What are the thoughts on that page? On waste and recycling, still trying to decide what the title should be: recycling, waste and recycling, waste diversion. We've got our stacked area composted, recycled, and landfilled. In some way, maybe in a caption, we need to mention what the specific percentages are. I think folks are interested in that. So, composted plus recycled is 33%. So that needs to be brought out somehow. We got space for a featured project. And then the same graph below for city facilities. It looks a little weird. Yeah, part of the reason that we have so much recycled content, just overwhelming the other categories, is we've been capturing all of the materials that are recycled and all of the recycled content purchasing done by street building. So all of that aggregate that's recycled, all the recycled content that ends up being put back down into new roads, it's all being captured. Part of the reason that it went up and came back down is we're still working out data collection and reporting. So there was a lot of data disclosure in 2013, and then not so much. Also, we don't build the same amount of roads every single year, so there may be some fluctuation even when we have good protocols for data collection on that.
Scott, I was just going to ask a question about the composting component of the facilities. And do you have a take on the drop-off from that? You'd think that would be relatively consistent.
Yeah, I don't have a description for you yet. There may be due to just poor reporting, or maybe due to less projects, but I'm not sure.
Are the city facilities data included in the community-wide data?
The community-wide, yes, is the answer.
Okay. So so that big lump in recycling is reflected in the green stripe of the community-wide as well.
Mhm.
Okay. Because interestingly here, the scale is not wildly different between the two. There's not a order of magnitude bump up. I wonder if can you break out the road data and look at the signal of sort of other recycling? I wonder if that's more informative or indicative. Because you're right, so it seems like the
commodities
road,
recycling?
Yeah, the road that's so heavy and it's
Yeah.
happens on a schedule that's not really linked to performance per se. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah. It's kind of tricky. I mean, potentially we could put a different category and call it construction demolition, maybe. And that would present us with a picture of what facilities are really doing in terms of what goes out the back door, waste and recycling.
Yeah, I would agree with Steve on that because it breaks out the behavior change, whether it's taken place or not. And we ran into that same issue on campus. If like ag waste being recycled was kind of dominating the waste stream, the recycling picture, and we didn't know whether we were doing improving or not, and maybe breaking that out on this would tell us that.
As a featured project, it might be nice to do one of the one of the special collection events or the America Recycles event, something to point out an example of the efforts that are underway.
Great idea.
Or electronics recycling. That's been kind of a big push.
Other thoughts on this page? Okay. Next is nuisance abatement. We've got 3 charts here. The first one is nuisances over time by resolution. So whether we send a letter and the owner abates the nuisance themselves, or whether we send a letter, the owner does not abate the nuisance, and the city has to hire their vendor to abate the nuisance. Next is nuisances by type, vegetation nuisances or garbage refuse nuisances. And last is Adopt Urbana. So Adopt Urbana is kind of like Adopt a Road program or Adopt a Highway, only it's streets and lots within the city of Urbana. And the city, Public Works, provides some equipment for volunteer groups who want to commit to doing 2 cleanups a year, minimum 2 cleanups, and we put them on our list and work with them. So, garbage pickers and garbage bags and gloves and reflective vests, and we'll also, I think we also allow them to put the garbage in our dumpsters when they're done, that kind of thing. So we kind of facilitate. We wanted to capture, we did the program, but we never tracked anything. And so we wanted to track what we're getting accomplished with this. And so what we're thinking of in terms of what's important is what's the dollar value that we're getting out of this for our volunteers. That's one way. And so that's what's here. And we've only been doing it for 2 years, which is why we only have 2 data points. And I mentioned earlier, when you only have 2 data points, it's not all that enlightening. There are other ways that we could track this. I'm trying to remember what's in our spreadsheet. I think we have volunteer hours. I'm not sure if we collect the volume or weight of the waste. I just don't recall. But that could be another way that we could present the value that we're getting out of our Adopt Urbana program.
Scott, I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with the concept of calling it the value of those. And you're saying that sort of what we would have had to pay them if we were paying them $10 an hour, right? I think the value is much stronger than that. Community awareness, community
So maybe hours?
Impact. I'd rather see hours myself.
And since you only have 2 years worth of data, rather than putting it on a chart, maybe do some sort of a table where you can pick up some other things that just do, 2014 and 2015, so that you're not indicating that there's a trend where there really isn't one.
So you're saying like the 2 years and a column for hours and a column for maybe the number of volunteers and the tonnage or whatever metric you were saying that we have.
Yeah, across the top you have the years, and then down the side you might say, volunteer hours, tonnage of waste picked up, whatever. just a few things to highlight it. And then, you know, you can continue to use the table from year to year until you get enough data points. Do you think that you can
Yeah.
actually start to chart it?
Maybe at 3 or 4 years, you
Yeah.
go back to the.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other comments on this page?
Oh, are there only 2 types of nuisances?
We also regulate the sidewalk snow removal ordinances, which applies to certain neighborhoods in the city, not all. Though that nuisance is extremely small. I mean, it's
So there's nothing about like noise or animals or something?
correct. We also regulate some pieces of the noise ordinance. There is, 1 or 2 complaints a year that we respond to, and snow has, anywhere from probably 2 to 10 incidents that we respond to. So it kind of is dwarfed by the other
Yeah,
categories.
maybe there's some word like major type. I mean, you're basically saying these are the 2 primary issues, refuse and vegetation.
We could put
So,
something in the
like-
maybe a caption that says,
Mhm.
we also do this and this, but
These
there's
are
just
the
a couple a year. It's
um,
not worth graphing.
Quantity.
Two questions. The target audience of the report, and then do you have plans to put in a little bit more text, or are you just limited to captions?
I want to stay away from text for a couple of reasons. I don't want it to turn into like another climate action plan report only. Now it's everything, and primarily because I want it to be digestible. The target audience is commission, council, and probably a subgroup of environmentally interested residents.
Okay. Because I think some of the charts need a little bit of explanation, especially when you have significant changes, and I think you can put in a little bit of text, but I don't think it requires that much more.
Yeah, I think some captions at least describe what's being represented in the chart. And then if there's something to explain, like for instance, why water use is going down, that may be in a side box, kind of like a featured project, only it might be a different title, like explanation or something. Anything else on this page? The last page, nope, one more. Sorry, 5 pieces of work, not 4. Municipal electric aggregation. The charts I've got here are cumulative renewable energy credits purchased. It's kind of linear. It's not all that exciting. You can probably guess what's going to happen next year
Why is it cumulative?
because it looks really good.
But aren't they just purchased for a one-time year?
It's true.
I don't know that. I would
if it were-
recommend that it was Rex purchased per year
It would
for
be.
the year.
It would basically be flat then, because it's just reflective of how much electricity is used, and maybe it's just not all that important to represent that at all.
It wouldn't be perfectly flat. I don't know. What do you guys think about this cumulative, Rex?
I think it's pretty the way it is.
It is.
To be honest,
It is pretty. But I mean, somebody who is looking at it quickly would think that we actually bought 250,000 in 2015,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and we did
That's a good
not.
point. Yeah, it doesn't make for a very good graph either way. If you do cumulative, it's linear and also somewhat misrepresentative, as you described. If you do per year, then it's basically flat, and it's really just a representation of how much electricity is used. So it's not very useful either way.
But this is one of those. This is one of those locations that you could do a table.
Hmm.
And you could do a table that has the amount purchased each year and have a column then that lists the cumulative purchase over time.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, switching it to a table.
Just to be clear on the cumulative savings, obviously 2015 is not over. We don't have a quarterly report for, I think, two quarters probably. So there's going to be a lot more savings in 2015.
Now, this is also labeled cumulative, although we're not seeing only net additions year by year. Does that reflect losses?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is over 2 contracts. Each contract is 2 years. The contracts are not January 1 to December 31st, so there may be a better way to represent the time, maybe by month.
So I know I'm still a little shaky on how the aggregation really works, but who is realizing these savings? Is $200,000 so far in 15 or total?
Ratepayers.
Hmm?
Ratepayers.
Okay.
This is savings on utility bills.
To the community, to the participants in the
Correct.
aggregation program.
Mhm.
And savings compared to what?
Compared to the Ameren rate, if they were on Ameren's basic generation service.
So 14 compared to the 14 rate and 12 compared to the 12 rate, not 14 compared to the 12 rate. Like do you update the Ameren rate each year too?
Every month. This is what this drills down to is a quarterly report, which actually has every single month in it, and it has a comparison of. So it has total electricity consumed by people participating in aggregation, and then it has that times what they would have paid if they're on Ameren, and then times what they actually paid based on aggregation, and then the difference.
So in we might be able to extrapolate that Ameren's rates went down.
Ameren had they had a rare occurrence where a particular true-up charge that is always supposed to be very small all of a sudden got real big, and it was a savings to the ratepayers. And so there was a short period of time where their costs for supply was lower than everyone else's in the market. And so by comparison, our ratepayers aggregation participants were paying more than Ameren service.
Scott, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Wait, oh. Okay, Scott, I was just going to ask just a thought as far as the cumulative REX purchase. We're looking at cumulative energy. Would it make more sense to show this as cumulative metric ton CO2 equivalent avoided from REC purchases? So then it would make sense over time how many metric tons CO2 did we not burn? Or, fossil fuels did we not burn, right? So does it make more sense showing it that way than showing the cumulative
Yeah.
energy purchased?
I think it would. It would essentially look the same, linear. And if you did it by year, it would also look flat. But it's a different way to think about it.
Well, you'd have to look at what Ameren's portfolio was, right? So you'd have to go back and look at the reports for each year where they were with having, like what percentage renewables they had on the conventional electrical grid. I don't know, I'd push for staying with the table in that case.
Well, if you want to stay with the chart and you like the way it looks with the cumulative, then you just need to put a line on there to show what the actual was and put that in your legend so that you can see the data point that in 2012 we purchased this many, in 2013 we purchased this many, but your chart actually shows the cumulative. And if you do avoided, then, I mean, that's actually a nice chart from the standpoint that you want to see the cumulative at the end. We've avoided this much over this amount of time.
Right.
This page relates to page 3, the energy, and so what if, I wonder if some of these, I don't know, I wonder if there are clues on how to deal with this as a table or a chart, if we think about it, in the way that it relates to our, this first chart is the projected CO2 emissions. Anyway, they're the same topic, and so I can see them together, and I think maybe there was discussion on this, and maybe I missed it, but on the back on page 7, the cumulative savings, and I think this is what you're talking about, how the Ameren bump up, but our cumulative savings, expect that they keep growing, but they fell down again, and so is it we don't want to show a negative on that? I mean, is it the optics of the thing, or?
Well, I think what we're doing is participating in the market,
Yeah.
and there's risk in that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working on 2-year contracts, and we're doing them back to
Yeah.
back. And I think it's fair to say this is a long-term program to save our residents money. And so in that sense, I think it's fair to show
Yeah.
the savings from the program over time. But yeah, I mean, there's different ways to show
Sure.
the same data.
Sure.
I guess one of the things I was kind of getting at was the idea that, I mean, we're doing municipal aggregation here, and there are a lot of places across the state that are doing this. And how is that impacting Ameren's rates? It's interesting to me to just think about, is something that we've done by us doing the first 2 years, did that influence the larger energy market
Mm.
and then have an impact that we're seeing the reduction in 14?
Mm.
But because we are now a market, in our own way, a market participant, it's just something to consider. And you can't see that from a graph, but it's out there.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest maybe you could show it as a line graph, but show kind of the Ameren line, and then our line, and maybe some other groups' lines, just to show that we weren't probably the only group that see a decrease, I guess.
So like price over
Yeah.
time, their price, our
Yeah.
price.
Mm.
Because then you would see the line kind of be above the Ameren line, and then it would be below, but you still collectively would be a savings.
Yeah, that could be interesting. So Todd had mentioned that this has a strong nexus with energy and climate. I mean, should it be on the same page? Should we just drill down to one aggregation chart that has the most relevant data and put it on the energy and climate page? May run out of space, but maybe.
If I mean, if we're going to be going in and tweaking those charts, I think we can figure out a way to make things fit.
I haven't thought about that. One of the things with the energy page that I was wondering is if we should have one about the community and one about the city facilities. So if you had a page about the community, then the municipal aggregation could fit there. And then the municipal facilities could have its own page. I don't know if that's...
I'm just not sure there's enough to say about it other than just showing the one chart, but maybe. Okay, last page is awards and grants. So it's basically a logo and a short text block about the award or the grant we received.
I would add the ISTC water
Mm. It's not on there, is it?
And your blurb about the Green Office Challenge it needs some revision, minor revision.
Okay.
Scott, was the water plan, did that receive an award this year as well?
That is not on here, is it?
Nope. I forget which entity granted that, but that was a,
APA.
yeah.
Illinois APA. I'm kind of hesitant to put this page on here because as we've now tallied them up, it's like 6 things. And that doesn't happen every year. I'm afraid that it could be a very sparse page next year. Might have to be combined with something else to fill it out. Maybe next year on the introduction page, if there's less to talk about for awards and grants, we'll just include it there.
Does the bicycle-friendly community apply?
There's a thematic relevance, but I hesitated to put it on here because I don't put a lot of work into that particular program. That's more in community development and engineering. And BPAC, yeah.
Scott, I wonder if, given that the scope of the report is the division that you work for, and at least some of your work involves this commission and the plans that we have developed and that you faithfully implement and track, if that's worth just a mention at all that we that you have done that was activity over the last year, staffing the commission and overseeing the implementation of those plans.
Maybe on this page.
Is
Yeah,
it something that we could provide a letter of thank you that could go in there that's from the commission? I think would that be, is this to be completed at the end of the calendar year? Is that the concept?
By the time we get all the data, it'll be March.
Okay.
So I'm envisioning calendar year to calendar year in terms of what the data is, but yeah, so one graphic that, if we have a corner of a page we can stick in are the progress pie charts that I kind of track. So
I was going to quip that we have at least as many hours in as the Adopter Banna people. Next time we should come with equipment and vests.
anything else? Anywhere else on the report?
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to review it and offer comments. Thanks very much.
It's calendar year 15, I believe, on the cover.
Yeah, when I started this, I was working to populate it with whatever I had for 2014 as placeholder, and then
Does this come back to us, or does it? I mean, would you be bringing it back before the end, or not?
I can. I can take comments into consideration, make some changes, and bring it back next month.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I think we definitely take interest in it. I mean, this commission overlaps with large parts of it, but not the totality of the report. I appreciate going through the whole thing.
Sure.
But that'd be fine.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay, any other interaction on this item? Okay, let's move to announcements. Do we have any announcements? I do not. Hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.